Hello everybody and welcome to Philosophy of Education. I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about why I study philosophy of education. And I'm going to make three suggestions. The first one is, well, because it's fun. Um, I like talking about philosophy, even better if I can do it over a glass of wine with friends or, have a beer and talk about the questions um, that I don't normally get to talk about during the day. So that in a sense is fun, and it's also compelling. Um, but only at different points in your life. So at different points in my life, I've been compelled to ask big questions because of I don't know what my circumstances in life or something that was driving me. But at other times in my life, I haven't been so inclined. Um, and so this probably applies to some of you as well. Some of you may just enjoy philosophical conversation, and so that's the reason. You don't need another reason, you just enjoy it. Or you might be at a point in your life when you're compelled to ask these kind of questions. But that's not going to apply to everybody. So a second possible reason is it's practical. Um, we're going to do two poster sessions in this class where we're going to leave the kind of agenda of the textbook to have you ask questions that are interesting and important to you and hopefully will be important and interesting to other people. But the third reason kind of contradicts that, and that is there's a sense in which this course is about not being practical. Um, every course I've ever taught in college for relating to education, there's always a pitch at the beginning and then an implicit and often explicit pitch throughout the course that says, hey, this is really important. This is something you use every day. And then the whole goal is to strive to make the learning as authentic and applicable to practice as is humanly possible. And sometimes and often fail at that, I think, um, because of the inherent problem of trying to uh, do education at the university rather than in schools themselves. But nevertheless, that's the goal. Make it as practical as possible. There's a sense in which when you do philosophy, you want to sometimes leave the practical behind. There will be discussions that will come up and someone may make the point that says, well, this isn't practical because of 1, 2, and 3. And when I hear those points, something inside me wants to say, yeah, but we're setting that aside. And we're asking idealistic questions here. And then we can always come back to the practical later, but first let's figure out our big values first before we decide why they won't necessarily work. So there's a sense in which this is one course that's anti-practical at times, where we want to be idealistic and not necessarily practical. And I do think that serves a larger practical purpose, and that is even though we may not have the power to do certain things today, there may be a time coming when things will be different and we will have to figure out big changes in education. And it's important to spend many years thinking about those questions, and this is part of that process. When I think about the world today, I think that we've gone towards more and more us towards a direction of narrower learning goals, more and more focused over time towards critical thinking, especially related to basic uh, subject areas, and especially related to math and science. And there are a lot of people that talk about pendulum in education. I don't see a pendulum. I see we have about 30 years now where we've been going down this path of going towards narrower and narrower learning goals and more assessment. But and part of that is driven by the fact that we've changed from an industrial society to an information-based society. We're trying to get a generation of students ready for that change. That's the big overall picture. However, there's more big changes coming. Um, it, right now, what's valued is critical thinking, but as computers take over more cognitive abilities, what's going to be valued next? As automation replaces more people in jobs, and what we really need is not a lot more people that are prepared in specific areas, but that have to invent whole new areas. What are we going to value then? When the narrow testing regime that we've come up with now does not necessarily succeed at the goals that have been set for it, what are we going to do then? So I think it's important to start these big conversations now even though we may not be in a position to make some of these changes just yet. And that's one thing that I think that the Noddings text is going to do is at least give you one big vision of an alternative to the way schools are today. We're really going to read Noddings' vision in chapter 12, but I'm going to bring it up a little bit earlier. And her vision is that caring has to be a more important part of schools. Not as a means to an end to have better learning environments so that we can do more academics and more critical thinking, but as the goal itself. That schools should be producing students, and I'm sure she wouldn't use the word producing, should be producing students who have a deeper ethic of caring for other people. That's not necessarily my vision, but I do respect it as a vision that is a definite alternative to what we have today. So I think it's a good one to ground a big question of the course in. Is this a vision that is something that we should consider instead of the vision we have today, which is more focused on outcomes of traditional academics and critical thinking? Anyways, welcome to the course, and looking forward to our many conversations together, and especially looking forward to a couple of the elements that I've got in here for poster sessions for you, and I'm going to explain those in an upcoming video. Thank you, everybody.